Starting off at number 10, we have Lena Dunham. So obviously Lena Dunham was incredibly busy on the set of her show Girls, as she was the creator, writer, director, producer, and she's the star of the show. And I can understand that when you're frazzled like that, you might not be able to schedule breaks to eat. But as a solution to that problem, Lena Dunham makes her assistants feed her. Like, she'll be on set with way too much in her hands, so while she's like reading a script or something, her assistant will be holding the food that Dunham is eating. In one photo of this taking place, Lena is getting fed a quesadilla by her assistant. And for me, that is just so gross on so many levels. And handheld food is definitely a no-go from me, especially with Corona now. Like, the thought of literally eating food that someone was just touching is absolutely revolting. Starting off at number 10, we have Lance Armstrong. Lance was exposed by his assistant right around the time that he was being exposed for doping, right after he was stripped of 7 Tour de France titles. His assistant decided it was a good time to come clean about everything, and the assistant, Mike Anderson, told Outside Magazine that Lance came back from Europe with cash stuffed into his pants, with the cash being from sleazy races that he did under the table. Also, Lance would apparently do everything possible to not be tested by the World Anti-Doping Agency, and that's why he got away with it for so many years. And apparently while he was at Livestrong events, which were events to support other cancer survivors, he would allegedly talk badly about the event and say things like, quote, "I hate these effing things." Ooh. Lastly, the assistant said he also left his wife in a very, quote, abrupt and cruel fashion, which doesn't say very good things about a person. Starting off at number 10, we have Christian Bale. Christian Bale is not an easy person to work with, so obviously he would be an absolute pain in the to work for. And after a leaked voice recording showed Bale screaming at his cast on a film, people finally understood how bonkers that he actually is. And his assistant Harrison Chung had such a bad experience working for him that he ended up writing a book about it. The assistant said that Bale would lecture fangirls about bothering him to the point where they started sobbing. And then another time when he received a fan letter, he told Chung the fan should be eliminated with a screwdriver thrust through the eyeball into the brain, which prevents any screaming. That was a quote, by the way, that's literally what he said. And apparently he didn't seem like he was joking either. And his stint working for the actor was so bad, he underwent 5 years of therapy for PTSD to get past the trauma that he put him through. And after hearing this, it makes a lot more sense that he regularly plays like, dark and twisted people. Might not be acting all that much.
Starting us off at number 10 is Jennifer Lopez. I never saw her as the bossy type, and for the most part she's always been praised for kindness throughout her career. But there is one story that has followed her throughout the years, and it's that she gave her new assistant a ridiculous amount of requirements. According to the HuffPost UK, she reportedly banned the staff working at her home from making eye contact with her. I personally think this is ridiculous, not to mention like humanly impossible. But Gawker also reported that she gave these requirements to her new assistant years back. Quote, "The person has to be graceful under pressure, have thick skin, and be resourceful in foreign countries. You'll be on call 24/7. You have to change diapers, work on little sleep, and cook if the butler is away. You have to know when JLo has her snack time. She won't say she's hungry, and you're expected to have food waiting." So if these crazy claims are true, then basically she's looking for a mom, a cook, and a mind reader who functions on no sleep.
And at number 9, Paris Hilton. Of course, Paris Hilton just had to be on this list. And even though she befriended one of her old assistants, Kim Kardashian, it didn't stop her from low-key bossing Kim around and even talking smack about her in her confessionals on her reality TV show. But one thing that Kim exposed about Paris is that for some really high-end purses, the ladies would walk around with them totally empty so that they wouldn't ruin the bag at all. But of course, someone has to hold her stuff. And that person would be none other than her assistant. And of course there are some rare photos showing all the stuff that the assistants are carrying around, while Paris usually has like a purse and a small dog to hold. And at number 9, Whitney Houston. The late singer's assistant Robin Crawford exposed Whitney's private life when she told the truth about her and Whitney's relationship. This was all done in the assistant's tell-all book when Crawford exposed that her and Whitney had a romantic relationship. According to the assistant, Whitney was a lesbian and everyone knew it. But again, this is just what the assistant said, not what we're saying is true. Whitney's mother, Chrissy Houston, was against their relationship, saying it was unnatural for two women to be that close. Even Whitney's husband at the time, Bobby Brown, did not like Robin Crawford, maybe because he felt that something more was going on. Crawford also said she was the first person to tell Whitney's mom about her drug use that ended up taking Whitney's life. In at number 9, Kim Kardashian. After Kim fired her longtime assistant Stephanie Shepard, Stephanie spilled the tea on what we all want to know about working for Kim. At the time, she wrote on Instagram, "Letting go of a bad friend and self-care involves forgiving yourself for your impossible standards and knowing you are worth it." So yikes, clearly she is, talking about a certain somebody. One thing that Stephanie revealed is that Kim apparently takes 1,000 selfies a day. But also, who really is shocked? She also said she is so vain that she has a staff remove plants or objects if they're in the way of a mirror. While on holiday at Punta Mita in Mexico, Kim took 6,000 selfies on her 4-day trip. Kim is also apparently a slob. She would leave clothes everywhere and Stephanie would have to clean them up. Stephanie also said there would be old food in the refrigerator, the trash would be overflowing in the kitchen, and the bathrooms, no one would go in there. On the one hand, that's pretty gross, but Kim is a busy woman, so I can see why she would be kinda messy. That's definitely not the worst thing that she's done.
Coming up next, number 9 is Mariah Carey. There have been a handful of diva moments reported throughout her singing career, but one of them came from one of her former assistants, Isler Oliver. The story surfaced back in 2014 after she filed a lawsuit against Mariah for her controlling behavior. Some of the details in the case were reported online, and people were shocked to hear some of the ridiculous requirements her assistant claimed she had to follow. She testified that Mariah made her work 16-hour days, 7 days a week, and said that she was not paid overtime for her hours or even her lunch breaks. She was Mariah's assistant for 7 years, but eventually quit in 2007 and decided to get some compensation for her treatment. Her lawyer released a statement saying, "My client put her family's life on hold while tending to Mariah Carey's family, and Mariah repaid her by underpaying her." They ended up settling the lawsuit, but it is still unclear what money she received from that.
And at number 8, Mike Myers. Mike Myers is someone who I've talked about before, and apparently his funny personality is not at all what he's like in real life, and he's incredibly rude to practically everyone. So obviously that attitude would translate over to how he treats his assistants, and he not only treats his own assistant badly, but he also is a complete pain in the ass to the PAs on the late night shows that he is on. One incident was when he was on Conan O'Brien's show, and he was seen bossing around the staff of that show, yelling at them to get him seltzer, Twizzlers, and creamer, which is firstly just super entitled, but secondly, who even asked for that combination of items? Who needs a seltzer and a creamer at the same time? And also the fact that he's bothering PAs who are incredibly busy even without Mike Myers harassing them makes the whole thing just even worse. And at number 8, David Hasselhoff. David Hasselhoff was well known back in the day as a classic heartthrob, known for his roles on The Young and the Restless and Baywatch. And he was even so popular that, fun fact, he actually used to hold the record for the most watched man on television, which is crazy. I didn't even know that was a thing. But it seems that his days of being a ladies' man are not over, and I don't blame him at all for that. Do your thing, Hasselhoff. But the issue here for the assistant is that one of his old assistants exposed that he actually makes the assistant go up to the women he's pursuing and ask them out for Hasselhoff. This is in the form of the assistant giving the women one of Hasselhoff's business cards, and I don't know if that would impress me. Someone asking me out on behalf of someone. That could really go 2 ways. I don't think I'd like it very much. I'd be like, wouldn't even ask me out yourself, Hasselhoff? I don't know. And at number 8, Anna Wintour. After the movie The Devil Wears Prada, Anna Wintour is probably the first person that comes to mind when talking about people who treat their assistants terribly. And Wintour was exposed by her old assistant at Vogue, Lauren Weisberger. And her time there was so bad, she made a tell-all book about it, which was then turned into the movie that we all know and love, The Devil Wears Prada. The book and the movie portrayed the editor-in-chief as pretty much being the worst kind of boss, emotionally abusive, judgmental, and demanding. Anna actually wasn't too upset about the book or the movie, with her even saying in one interview that she's okay with anything that makes the fashion industry more entertaining and glamorous, basically meaning that she was behind the film. And even though the movie portrays her as having ridiculous demands, it also portrays her as a successful and powerful woman who knows how to get what she wants. and I'm sure Anna Wintour didn't have any problems with that depiction of her.
Moving on to number 8, we have Christian Bale. The actor had the same assistant for over a decade, so people would assume they had a good relationship if they stuck around for that long. His assistant name was Harrison Chung, who ended up writing a biography about his time working for Bale. He described some of the things he had to do for the actor and how he ended up having to see a therapist after. He wrote, "I would do anything from sniffing Christian's armpits for BO right before he hit the red carpet to making emergency sock runs if Christian was all out of clean ones." He spoke with the Daily Mail about his time as an assistant and said that his therapist described his condition as post-traumatic stress disorder. I mean, I personally cannot imagine being a grown man having to go get another grown man a fresh pair of clean socks. And don't even get me started on the whole sniffing the armpits thing. That's disgusting. Although I'd probably sniff Miley Cyrus's armpits.
And at number 7, Amber Heard. I didn't have Amber Heard in my last one, and a ton of you guys wanted to hear about her, so here it is. With the way that she treated her ex-husband Johnny Depp and her other past partners, it's a guarantee that she would be a nightmare to an assistant. And she is. Amber's former assistant Kate James exposed her in a legal deposition that was part of Johnny Depp's defamation lawsuit against her. According to the assistant, Amber would routinely verbally and mentally abuse her, usually while Amber was intoxicated with substances like MDMA, mushrooms, and wine, with Kate even saying that she would wake up on edge the morning after Amber's binges because it was common for her to get terrifying texts from Amber in the middle of the night while she was wasted, with Kate going on to say that her time working for Amber is a nightmare that she hopes she's one day able to recover from. And at number 7, Ariana Grande. Ariana Grande is known for many things, and one of them is the fact that she's been called a diva by fellow celebrities. One of her diva-esque traits is that she likes to be carried around after a long day of walking. And since she's so small, it's probably not a very difficult task for the right assistant, but it's definitely a strange one. And this rumor got so big that Ariana had to address it, and she ended up confirming it to be true. This was in the form of an Instagram post, where the caption was, quote, "Jones carrying me off stage. Post-show ritual when my feet are broken." She also joked about it some more with James Corden in a bit they did where James carried her to a Starbucks while she was ordering her drink. Of course, it was a grande drink. And at number 7, Jessica Simpson. Jessica is another celebrity that's a total nightmare to work for. And over the years, she's gone through tons of personal assistants, which is never a good sign. And most of the assistants hated working for her, so after they quit, they spilled the tea on how terrible she is. One source told the Star that Jessica Simpson would dine and dash, as in she wouldn't pay the bill when she went to a restaurant, with one assistant adding that Jessica thought her stardom was payment enough. And even nastier, apparently Jessica wears a lot of hair extensions, but when she's done using them, she literally just drops them all over the place, with the assistant saying it literally looks like an animal is on the floor. And that one's pretty gross. Does she reuse those? Hopefully not.
Cruising to number 7 is Lady Gaga, another celebrity who had a lawsuit brought against them by their former assistant. Back in 2013, Lady Gaga's assistant, Jennifer O'Neill, filed a lawsuit for alleged unpaid overtime wages. In court documents that were released online, she said she was on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. She also claimed that the two of them had to share a bed when Gaga was touring and that she was never given her own hotel room and privacy. And we all know that Gaga can't afford that. During their time working together, it appeared that they had a good relationship. But once the lawsuit came out, Gaga was caught saying some pretty harsh things about her once assistant. A screenshot showed her saying, "Jennifer is an effing hood rat who is suing me for money she didn't earn." Jennifer sued her for almost $400,000 in overtime pay plus further damages. They were set to go to trial, but then it was announced that the two of them came to a settlement, and then the lawsuit was dismissed.
And at number 6, Mel B. Apparently the former Spice Girl is a lot spicier than we ever would have thought, and her former assistant completely exposed her for being a shady person. Mel's former assistant was actually a former friend, which makes his treatment even more shocking. The former assistant, Gary Meditayan, filed a lawsuit against Mel after she apparently didn't pay him $200,000 while he worked as her hairstylist and personal assistant. And wow, that is a lot of money. Meditayan was also very close with Mel, but it was at the expense of his own personal life. And because he did literally everything for her, he had basically no life at all. And allegedly he couldn't see his friends or family. He also exposed some pretty dark stuff too, like how Mel at one point was drinking ridiculous amounts, and it caused her to be violent with her own kids. Gary said that at her lowest point, Mel would drink 3 bottles of wine a day and multiple tequila shots, which would make her delusional and paranoid. And at number 6, Martha Stewart. Martha Stewart is a very busy and meticulous woman, so obviously she's quite a handful for any assistant, but she knows it and doesn't really care, with Martha admitting in a blog post that she keeps her assistant incredibly busy, with organizing in particular. One task that her assistant had was organizing all of Martha's cosmetics into labeled clear plastic tubs in her basement dressing room. Martha explained it in detail in the blog post, explaining the assistant removes items from the bins and recategorizes every item, reevaluating what is still usable and throwing out expired items. And obviously that entire system seems like a total pain in the ass, especially if Martha makes her do that for all the rooms in the house. But also if you're an assistant for Martha, I mean, you better expect a lot of housework. Like, that is one person I would not be Martha Stewart's assistant, because whatever I do would not be good enough. I swear, she can't even have it. I feel like she would have to be her own assistant. She's so, like, meticulous about everything. And at number 6, Courtney Love. Courtney Love is no stranger to controversy, which is clear from the scandal she has gotten into surrounding her late boyfriend, Kurt Cobain. And when it comes to assistants, she is just as bad. One of her old assistants actually sued her in 2012 for not paying her, and the payment that she was supposed to make was like really weird, with her getting paid $30 an hour and a full scholarship to Yale. Apparently she was also not only an assistant, but also a forensic research aide, with her even having the opportunity to work on the Nirvana biopic. But the assistant claims that not only did Courtney not pay her, she also made her work overtime, didn't pay her or the scholarship, and even asked her to do illegal tasks like hiring a computer hacker and posing as a lawyer. Another bombshell was when the assistant said that Courtney Love acted with an improper and evil motive amounting to malice or despicable conduct. Not too sure what that's referring to, but it doesn't sound good.
In spot number 6 is Naomi Campbell. Being an assistant to this supermodel would probably seem like a dream job for most people. But throughout her career, there have been incidents that would prove that it is not all glitz and glamour like we would probably think. One of the incidents is still famously known, and it goes back to 2001 when Naomi threw a phone at her assistant. The assistant claimed that she grabbed her by the arms and threw her down on a couch and threw a phone at her. At first, this story might seem like a little too crazy to be true, but this was not the first time violent claims have come out about the model. 1 year before this claim, Naomi actually pleaded guilty to a separate assault charge in relation to beating an assistant. Then, down the road in 2016, she faced more legal action after she allegedly assaulted a former public schoolboy. He had worked for a PR firm and was drafted onto her team, which clearly did not go too well. So there are multiple reasons why people should not apply to be her assistant anymore. Like, I wouldn't have even applied after I found out about the first thing.
Halfway number 5, Christina Aguilera. Christina Aguilera definitely is not even close to the worst on this list, but her request might be the most uncomfortable. Apparently when Christina was married to her ex, Jordan Bratman, they were pretty adventurous in the bedroom, and they would role play a lot, with both of them dressing up in costumes. And I truly could not care less what you want to do with your spouse in your own bed. That is nobody's business. But it was the business of her assistant, who apparently was tasked with picking up all of the clothes and costumes off the floor. And I would definitely be using gloves or like a tong if I was forced to pick that up. Yikes, probably both. Halfway number 5, Garth Brooks. Country singer Garth Brooks' former assistant, Lisa Sanderson, who worked for him for 20 years, not only exposed the star, but also sued him for close to $500,000. Saying in the suit that he was, quote, paranoid, angry, deceitful, and a vindictive man who will turn against those closest to him on a dime. Yikes, so clearly she's not very fond of him. Apparently the assistant also claimed that she tried to get him a career in TV and movies, but his demands were so insane that it never actually happened. With one example citing how he would refuse to work with anyone because he didn't want to share the limelight with other stars. Even saying that he refused a role in the massive movie Twister because he didn't want to be outshined by the tornado. Brooks' lawyers of course denied these claims, but with accusations as insane as that, I don't know how that could be made up. Like, how can someone make up that he was afraid of being outshined by a tornado? That's gotta be true, right? Halfway number 5, Angelina Jolie. Honestly, having Angelina Jolie on this list is not a shocker, because she seems like someone who would have some pretty strange demands. One assistant of Angelina's named Anna worked at their country estate in the south of France between 2008 and 2010. And apparently she saw Angelina and Brad fight all the time, and they would spend weeks living apart from each other. She also even said that she thought that Angelina was an alcoholic, with the assistant even claiming that when Angelina got too drunk, she would lock her 6 kids into one room. Anna even sued Angelina and Brad for $88,000 for wrongful termination after she took time off for an illness. Not great, Angelina and Brad.
Halfway through at number 5 is Courtney Love. The singer had an assistant named Jessica Labrie who ended up suing her for her behavior and missed pay. Some of the claims released in the lawsuit were very shocking that it almost seems too crazy to be true. Like, you just never know if this stuff is made up or not. According to the Rolling Stone, Jessica claimed that Courtney, I quote, acted with an improper and evil motive amounting to malice or despicable conduct. She went on to say that she worked over 60 hours a week without overtime pay and even claimed that she was asked to hire a computer hacker. Reports say that she was forced to send a false legal correspondence at one point. Jessica also said that Courtney had promised to cover her Yale tuition if she signed on to work for her, but then she never paid it. In 2012, she filed for wrongful termination, non-payment, and breach of contract. Her lawsuit was asking for up to $400,000. It wasn't until 2014 that they reached a settlement and both parties filed a motion to dismiss the case.
In at number 4, Khloe Kardashian. Khloe Kardashian had me really fooled. This whole time I thought she was the perfect housewife, with her house on keeping up always being perfectly clean, and with her pantry being essentially a work of art. But apparently that's all a lie. Even the coveted Oreo jar. And her assistant is really the person that makes that all possible. One of her assistants told Radar Online that Khloe didn't lift a finger, and one of the main jobs of her assistant is making sure that the house is spotless at all times, so it looks perfect on camera, even down to having the perfect number of cookies in her cookie jar. And even though this really isn't that insane of a request, I'm mostly just shocked because I really thought Khloe did it all herself. But Khloe definitely did have her diva moments, and allegedly if the food wasn't displayed the way that she wanted, Khloe would dump it upside down and make them do it all over again. And if that's true, that's next level. And at number 4, Robert De Niro. Robert De Niro actually might be one of the worst cases of treating an assistant terribly, as there's proof of it happening. The actor was actually sued for $12 million for gender discrimination by his former assistant, Graham Chase Robinson. The assistant claims that De Niro made abusive and sexist comments to her, and even would initiate unwanted physical contact. And this treatment was not just allegations, there was actual proof of it on a recorded phone call. In one call, De Niro berated her for not answering, and the audio is shocking. The lawsuit also claimed that one of the reasons she was paid so little was because she was a woman, with De Niro telling her that she could get pregnant using sperm from a married male coworker. She also claimed that he would meet her only by wearing bathrobe or pajamas, and then asked her to scratch his back. So much wrong with all of that. And at number 4, Lady Gaga. A few former assistants have spoken out against their terrible time working for Lady Gaga, with one of her assistants, Jennifer O'Neill, claiming that she was an actual monster. And apparently Gaga owed her roughly $400,000 in unpaid overtime during the 13 months that she worked for her. Apparently Jennifer would do literally everything for Gaga and was on call 24 hours a day. The lawsuit states that her duties included ordering Gaga's meals, making sure her outfits were on hand, the promptness of a towel following a shower, and serving as a personal alarm clock. The assistant Gaga had before that also had a terrible experience, with the assistant claiming that Gaga slept and took showers with her because she didn't like being alone. Honestly, that's what would be the nightmare for me. Like, not the long hours, but the fact that I have to sleep and shower with my boss. Like, I just need my personal space too much for that.
Rolling into spot number 4 is Lindsay Lohan. There was a point in her career when she was being titled the wild child of Hollywood. And during this time, Perez Hilton spilled a story about her and her personal assistant. Perez Hilton is the most famous celebrity news blogger in the world, but oftentimes his stories are up for debate, so we really don't know if this one is true. But according to him, Lindsay once kicked her personal assistant named Gavin Doyle out of a car right after he bailed her out of jail. After Perez spilled the beans, Gawker also added to this story and reported that Lindsay had actually tried to blame a car accident on him earlier that day. She had told the police that he had been driving the car when it crashed, but it was actually her and she was charged with a DUI. So he bailed her out of jail, and then that's what he gets in return.
And at number 3, Ryan Gosling. Based on the characters that he plays, it would be easy to assume that Ryan Gosling is the perfect guy. He's always playing the charming and handsome guy next door that sweeps you off your feet. But when he isn't acting, he's apparently super strange. And although there's no horror stories of his assistants getting treated horribly, there are some stories that will just make you think twice about what he does behind closed doors. One random fact is that he likes getting waxed. Like, he likes the feeling of getting waxed. And as a person who has waxed my eyebrows for my whole life, I can tell you that it hurts. So that is definitely very crazy. Also, one of Ryan Gosling's housekeepers famously claimed that he walks up the stairs on all fours. Okay? And he also sleeps upside down in bed, allegedly, with his head actually at like the foot of the bed. So clearly, he might have some skeletons in his closet, because that's some weird stuff. Like, there's gotta be more. And at number 3, David Beckham. This one is a case of an assistant exposing their employer cheating. But in this one, Beckham was allegedly cheating with the assistant. Back in 2004, the assistant, Rebecca Luz, said in an interview that she had an affair with David Beckham. Allegedly, the affair began with flirting and texting and gradually developed into a bond. But after a while, the relationship was purely physical, which made her feel dirty and cheap. Beckham vehemently denied the claims, and clearly Victoria Beckham didn't believe the claims, or they were able to work it through, as the couple is still together and happily married.
In the 3rd spot is David Beckham. I know us ladies are very upset right now because we thought that he was one of the good guys. Turns out that claims of bad behavior were brought up against him by his former PR assistant Rebecca Luz. But their story is a little confusing because she had also claimed that she had an affair with David while she was taking care of his children. It was back in 2004 when she made headlines after she sold a kiss and tell story to the newspapers and claimed that her relationship with David had become intimate despite the fact that he was still married to Victoria Beckham. She revealed all these juicy details to a British journalist but claimed that she felt used by David and that the relationship made her feel dirty. Beckham denied all these claims, so we're still not sure who to believe on this iconic story, but no other reports have come out that he treated employees badly, so...
And finally, number 1, Mariah Carey. Is anyone surprised that the biggest diva in the entire music industry is on this list? Because I am certainly not. The assistant named Liana was Mariah's assistant for 2 years, until she was wrongfully fired in 2017, which led her to sue Mariah. According to a lawsuit that she filed and a 32-page complaint, she was on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for both Mariah and her former manager. It seems that Mariah's former manager, Stella Stoppler, was a huge part of the problem, and she subjected the assistant to tons of like using racial slurs when talking about her. But there were also completely disgusting things that happened there too. And allegedly Mariah's manager tackled her to the ground and then urinated on her. Liana's lawsuit alleges that Mariah knew about the abuse and was even present for a lot of it, but still allowed it to go on. After she complained, she was fired 1 month later. And this is just so insane and nasty, but also I really don't know why that assistant would want to stay working for someone that would do that to her, right? Like, instead of suing her for wrongful termination, she should probably sue her for like workplace harassment or something instead. And at number 2, Selena Gomez. Selena is again another celebrity that really isn't that bad, but a former assistant exposed her for being quite the slob, which is a little hard for me to believe honestly because she always seems like so prim and proper, but I guess that is the Disney machine in action. But according to her assistant, she leaves her dishes lying around, and in the assistant's words, she quote, has a lack of respect for other places and can completely trash a hotel room in less than 24 hours. And the worst part for me is that she apparently leaves makeup stains all over her bed and sheets because she doesn't wash her makeup off. And like, how can you be a celebrity and not wash your face? Like, if the whole world is looking at you, that's even more of a reason to make sure you have a really good skincare routine, come on. Hopefully she's learned from then. She'll also leave food wrappers all over the place, she doesn't clean up spills, and she also leaves her undies lying around for her assistant to pick up. So she's either very, very busy or very messy. Maybe a bit of both. And at number 2, Sandra Bullock. Sandra Bullock's personal life is pretty private, so it's hard to know what kind of boss that she would be. But based on accounts from her past assistants, she can be a bit of a nightmare. One strange request is that her assistant must always make sure the curtains in her home are kept closed at all times. Sandra's also known to have a pretty bad temper when things don't go her way, and unfortunately she takes that out on the assistant. According to one witness, while they were standing in line for a coffee, she berated her assistant for being 5 minutes late. And obviously, there's two sides to every story, but based on that, brief description, seems like a bit of an overreaction, if I do say so myself. And at number 3, Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins' personal assistant had a darker experience with him, and based on his public persona, it's something people would never expect. Kimberly Stokes, a former assistant, worked as Tony Robbins' live-in personal assistant and even shared her thoughts in a BuzzFeed article about him. She recalls one time where he walked into her bathroom while she was showering and dropped his towel, exposing himself. This wasn't the only time Robbins made a pass at her either. To make matters worse, Stokes was a survivor of as a child, and Robbins knew that. Another former assistant named Kate said she considered seeing Robbins naked as a part of her job, but also saw his teachings as life transforming. And the fact that multiple people have made accusations against him proves that this is really just like a bigger issue for him altogether.
Taking over the number 2 spot is Sarah Jessica Parker. She seems like a genuine and kind person, but for some reason she comes off as a complete psychopath when it comes to dealing with her staff members. But this is only because an anonymous former assistant came out with claims that Sarah had ridiculous demands when they were her assistant. These are some of the claims that came out. Apparently, she had really strict instructions on how everything in her house is used and presented. Her staff had to refill a 1.75 ounce container of Vaseline with a small spoon or knife for her children to use. The refill jars must not be too big, and the cutlery must be hand washed using a paper towel and then put in the dishwasher. Apparently, her staff members also had to check the levels of her house products daily and only order a new product once it was completely run out. Now, these claims are coming from someone anonymous, so they could be totally untrue. Plus, in 2014, she was a bridesmaid to one of her assistants. So is she really that demanding? I don't know.
And in at number 1, Naomi Campbell. So I didn't know this before doing this video, but apparently Naomi Campbell is a nightmare on set. And there are tons of documented cases of her just being terrible. And that attitude also translated to her assistants, which she treated horribly. And the most famous incident of this terrible treatment was when she threw her phone at one of her assistants, Amanda Brack. And yikes, that is like on another level. Amanda spoke more about everything when she made an appearance on the Tyra Banks show, saying that Naomi attacked her at least 3 times, spat in her face, and even cut up her passport and threw it in a swimming pool. And like, why a person would ever do that is truly beyond me. Like, what? She also spilled the tea on the phone incident, saying that while Naomi was stressed about flights and luggage, she slammed the phone into her face. And Naomi's hairdresser intervened and basically saved Amanda. But that was not her only nightmare interaction with an assistant. Amy Castaldo also speaks of how she was subjected to horrible treatment, and she endured things like headbutting, biting, pulling her to the ground by her hair, and calling her degrading names. And at number 1, Taryn Manning. Taryn Manning is another person who was absolutely awful to her assistant, and it was so bad it had to be handled in court. The former assistant Hillian Hartman reported that the actor was physical with her multiple times, and Manning was later ordered to stay away from the assistant after the two had a vicious brawl at the Dream Hotel in New York that left her assistant covered in bruises. According to a lawsuit that was filed, Manning choked and punched her personal assistant and whipped her with a wet towel. She also sprayed Windex in her eyes and mouth. And of course, after doing something like that, you're gonna feel the wrath of the law, as you should. And Manning was charged with misdemeanor assault and choking. Yeah, very, very rightfully so. That is, like, what? I don't even know how a person could do that to another person. Like, just, I don't understand celebrities. And at number 2, J-Lo. This one is not a shock at all to me, because I've covered tons of times how J-Lo is one of the meanest people ever. Her demands are also the most degrading, with her insisting that her employees don't talk to her or even look at her. One of the job descriptions for her assistant was actually obtained, and it read, must have thick skin, be graceful under pressure, resourceful in foreign countries. They must be on call 24/7, be able to change diapers, work on little sleep, and cook if the butler is away. And if you're J-Lo's personal assistant, you have to know when it's J-Lo's snack time. Even though she won't actually say when she's hungry, like, you just are always expected to have food waiting and know when she wants to eat.
Earning the number 1 spot is Taryn Manning. This one is by far the worst story I've read about a celebrity and their personal assistant. The Orange is the New Black actress could have ended up behind bars for some of her violent behavior towards an old staff member. She was once facing charges of misdemeanor and assault after punching and choking her personal assistant, Holly Ann Hartman. According to Taryn's lawyer, the two of them had a late night argument that turned into a physical altercation. Apparently, the two of them had been working long hours when the actress attacked her assistant. But her assistant later decided that she would not pursue the case any further, and many people think it was because she too would be at fault since they were both throwing punches. But in the end, Taryn was court ordered to stay away from Holly Ann from that moment on.